I realize it's rare to hear from somebody that's like, let's talk about printers. And I'm going to talk a little bit about printers, but I've actually talked a lot about how you break out into commoditized categories. And one of the things that I really like to do in the past, we were just talking, is I like to come speak at Brand Innovators conferences. We spoke a lot when I was at PlayStation and Amazon and Twitch. Like, we talk a lot about kind of the goodness of those various businesses, I think, without fully kind of going into the how. So what I want to do here is I just want to talk a little bit about, we sometimes focus a lot on the creative or the tactics or the things that kind of everyone else sees in the world without kind of really thinking about, all right, how do we get to a position that allows us to be fully differentiated? A lot of, I think, what all of us on the marketing side really need to continue to think about is how are we unique, how's our position unique, and what's our why? So what's our why for our company, what's our why for the products that we serve and that we market, and kind of it's the existential, like, why do we exist, but what are we doing that allow us to not just do what everyone else is doing? I think we see a lot out there, we start to kind of weave in as marketers a lot of the same creative tactics, or a lot of the same, like, everybody rushes to one area really quickly, and that's not great. Like, that's not really, I think, the way that we all want to kind of participate as marketers. I think in all this is kind of a, like, we need to do things differently, and yet we don't always do that. And so, there's a couple things that I wanted to put out there just for consideration. The first is, I think many of us work in the plastic box business. We are not plastic box marketers. Things in tech, you're not rooting for a product. Like, people are not lining up going, I can't wait for whatever it might be because it's this plastic thing that I can put on my office. Like, this is great. Like, nope, this is a Phil Knight quote, but even he on the Nike side, people don't root for that actual product. What they root for is a movement. They root for what you believe in, what you stand for. All of you have something that you enjoy in your personal lives, products that you wear, but you're not really caring as much about the product itself as it is about the brand behind it. And so how much we invest in the brand and how we differentiate ourselves in that way is really, really important. And so the third part of that, then, is how you think and the way that you kind of portray yourself. And in this case, another Nike quote, which I think is very good, is you can be the biggest brand in the space and yet still act as if you're not. And that's the old premise of challenger brands. You can be by far the biggest market share and still continue to act like a fighter, right? So you can still act like, hey, I'm going to challenge convention and I'm going to do things differently. And that means constantly thinking of ways to be different than what the competition is doing, different than what culture is doing, kind of going against the ways that you see in the market or that you see even from customers, but continue to meet their needs as much and to the extent that you can. Okay, so that's the third bit. And I think the fourth bit is tactical. So you notice I waited until the end to kind of get to the creative part, but I really like this. Series Razors looked at a really commoditized product, and maybe someone's from them at some point, or worked there at some point. And they said, we don't do anything like what's out there with the kind of established razor brands. We're going to do something completely different. In their case, they kind of did this whole mail order, we're going to kind of personalize this for you. And it was really, really interesting because it turned everything on its head. It was a couple years ago, right? So the times have changed since then. But they said, we want to do exactly the opposite of what everyone else is doing. Okay, so that's kind of how we started at HP, started looking at the printer business. And I promise you, I'm not going to sit there and talk about printers too much, but I am going to talk a little bit about how we approach our version of this and kind of the challenger way of thinking through things. I will tell you, and many of you have gone through the challenger brands kind of thesis. I've done it in 4 different companies now, is that it's not a, hey, I went to this 2-hour seminar. It was really cool. We're challenger brands. We're done. This takes years. At the very minimum, the strategic structure of it takes years. After that, you constantly have to act in the way that I mentioned earlier. You constantly have to be part of that. And so there is a way to do that. Number one is that strategic fame is the goal. So advocacy is what we all need to be actually shooting for anyway. We should be getting all of our customers to do our work for us. We can all go on vacation. That should be what we're trying to do. We're trying to get others to help market our products. So strategic fame is the way to do that. There is a way, there is a structure, kind of a formalized structure in terms of how you do this within breaking out of that sea of sameness. These are the three tenets of that. The first one is intelligent naivete. It's like looking at the world in a very curious way, like asking why. Like, why are we going about this way? Why does our company operate the way that it does? Why is our organization structured this way? Why do we position our products this way? Why is our audience segment this? Like, lots and lots of why, and doing it from a position of just curious. Like, why, and avoiding, by the way, the question of like, we did that 10 years ago, never work again. Like, a few of us in here were talking about that before, but that happens a lot. So, be curious. Second point is, you need a point of view. You gotta have a point of view on the world, you gotta have a point of view on your audience, you gotta have a point of view on your segments and your product. Because without that, you're not really standing for anything. And I don't mean like a political point of view. I don't mean like a point of view in terms of the way that someone needs to operate as a customer. But just a point of view about how someone could use your product or service and make their life better. Like remove friction in their life. Like what's the point of view you have on that? And then the third point, the one that I use in my team all the time, because it's really, really hard, but it's sacrificing or commit. If any of you, I don't know if any of you have read Beautiful Constraint, but the Eat Big Fish team wrote that. And it's we all face constraints in our lives, particularly in the work world, right? We have budget constraints, we have time constraints, we have process constraints, we have lots of things. But you can't do them all. So like you have to figure out a way, like, what am I going to give up? And what am I going to fully focus on? And really make sure that I'm diving into that and winning there. So in what we were looking at, I'm having to give up, if I don't have enough budget, I have to give up a market, or I have to give up a segment, maybe I have to give up a product. I don't know, but sacrificing opportunity is really important. Okay. Technically, as you go through the challenge process, there's 6 boxes. I'm going to show you 3, because these 3 are actually maybe the most critical ones to really focus on. First one is the monster or the thing that you're really fighting against. Like, what are you punching against in society or in culture or for your audience? It's always in service of your audience. But how are you going to fight? And what are you going to fight? I'm going to show you HPs. Second one is the belief. The belief brings in that point of view. So this starts to say, like, we believe this, and this is why and how we'll react to the monster, and it begins to get your mind going into that differentiation point that I made earlier. Okay, so that starts to separate you. And the last bit is the offer. So what are you bringing as your product or service, and what can you do better than everyone else? This trains the mind into a position that allows you to be differentiated. Okay, so this is the structure. We looked at a number of different brands. Many of you work at these brands, so I'm going to kind of fly through them, but I just wanted to give you kind of the academic part real quick, because this is how, when we went through this, particularly at PlayStation and Amazon, now we're doing it again with HP, but we go to Nike's offices and we look at what they do. So their belief in their message, as you see here. T-Mobile, same thing. T-Mobile did a really good job. Obviously, they said, why would you want to be in contracts? Like, that doesn't make any sense. We'll break out of that. We'll offer something different. And obviously, they've done very, very well. Robinhood has had a number of other issues, but one of the things they really did was they said, like, finance and investing doesn't have to be for the select few. It doesn't have to be for the older people who kind of have made the market. It can be for all of you, right? You can democratize that. So they separated that way. That was their belief. And then lastly, PlayStation. I mean, somewhat self-serving. There's 2 PlayStation guys in the back, but who helped work on this. But we all kind of created a position that allowed us to really fight back against where Xbox was. Xbox at the time was very much kind of profit over gamers. We saw that. We're like, what if you invest heavily in gamers? Our point of view is that gamers matter, right? We're for gamers was the idea. And we came up with creative ways. PlayStation took off after this. So I can tell you, like, the challenger mindset, breaking free from this sea of sameness really, really works. I've seen it firsthand. And to this day, PlayStation has an advantage in the market that is really not going to be made up. Much of it because of the work that was done previously. Okay, so what's HPs? HPs is this, right? So many of you may not even own a printer. If you do, it can be a pain in the ass. Like, sometimes they don't work. They don't work when you need them. The support's rough. Whatever it might be, needing, whatever, there's a lot of friction. So it's a category and sector of decline. So we look at it and we're like, well, what are we going to do about that? Like, you can't just ride the wave down, hope for the best. Like that's certainly not the way HP looks at things, not the way I look at things either. The pain is definitely exceeded the benefits though. So very clearly, like we have a monster to fight against in this category. The category overall, this is not an HP comment. Combat the category, there is a problem. So we have to address that. Right? So how are we going to do that? There's a lot of different ways. I'm not going to go into it here because there's a lot of stuff that we're about to put out in the market and I don't want to like release it all. But I can tell you that we are going to be fighting against that. Like fighting against a very clear position in the market that has been established by the customer. And we're very clearly seeing that in the numbers for the category overall. Okay, so the results from this, though, can be very interesting. So you can start to see, like, as a marketer, okay, if I'm fighting against a position where the monster is printer rejection, you can start to look at the creative output, the beauty of the expression, the art, the things that come from the printer. And by the way, there's a lot of things that you see in the world that are printed by HP. Wine labels, Coke cans, these banners over here, anything on walls, wallpaper, anything that you see in the world is almost always HP printed, including a school project, including manuscripts that you maybe wrote many times. All those things, so why not think about ways that we can call that out rather than really go against, oh, I'm going to wait and like, we'll get the ink here, we'll get the support done, don't worry, like, we'll get it in reacting to those kinds of things, which is where everyone else fights. Like, why do it on the input? Why not look at the output? So the output is how we're looking at this, how we look at breaking free from that Sameness. And there's a million and one ways to do that. And the rally cry is let's put the magic back in print. So this rally cry is really important, I think, for a lot of reasons. We talk a lot about here about belief brands. We talk a lot about how you work with employees. One of the things that is great about breaking down Sameness is it's a real kind of accelerant to your employees, to your teams. Because they look at it and they're like, oh, just doing the same thing. Like, oh, we don't have to do the same thing every single day. It's a vision statement you put on the wall. And you're like, we're going to fight against this. Like, this is what we're rallying towards. This is what we're going towards. And so, this is what we're going towards. This is what HP is doing. And we're super excited to be able to kind of kick this off. I want to put kind of two ideas up here that we're working on as a result of that. One of these is, essentially, it's called Wrap Anywhere, but the idea is that you can personalize you as a person and essentially wrap anything in the world and do that through HP printing, which is possible. Just people don't know about it. Like, they don't know how that creative expression can be brought out and how it doesn't have to be, oh, so much friction from this printer. It can be the beauty of you on a wallscape. It can also be, as many of you know, it can be the things that you wrap as an outdoor board or that you put into the world. These things are really interesting in ways to kind of continue to push and motivate and drive the business forward. Okay, so I wanted to bring all this up because I think sometimes we get really caught up either in we have to jump right to the creative and the tactical, or we go, oh, I got this headache. I'm not really sure how I'm going to be able to fight against this category that's kind of really tough and commoditized. When a lot of us work in commoditized categories, there are ways to break free from that. All right, so that's my quick 15 minutes. I do want to run a video. You can see a little bit more of what we're trying to do, and then I think we're going to go into a fireside chat.
Somewhere along the way, the print industry lost sight of what matters. Busy selling printers, it overlooked why people print. It's been a classic case of ink over output, function over fun, profit before purpose. It's no wonder the monster in the room looks something like this. But we are HP, and we are better than that. So let's shift the focus from printer hardware to printing experiences. Because printing takes a blank sheet of paper and turns it into something with meaning. Printing is art and copy. It's vocal concerts, moments that matter. Science projects, projects, the pure joy of coloring. Rooms reimagined, pets, missing pets, the new house, the budget for the new house, taxes, yep, those two, and more moments that matter. see, printing really can be magical. Why? Because it takes what's in our heads and puts it in our hands. So, let's turn the page and do something extraordinary. Together, let's put the magic back in print.